Good morning. What is up, guys? Welcome back to Fit Body Secrets, where my mission is to bring you guys inspiration, motivation, a ton of tips, and some education along the way. And today is an educational topic. I'm going to be talking about hormones, and this topic is going to get probably a little bit like, whew. I'm going to try and keep it very simple. Do y'all see my cat's tail? Whenever I talk to my computer, he just thinks I'm talking to him. I'm going to go ahead and hit live to make sure I'm live on Instagram as well for people that are watching there. And if you guys have any questions or anything as I get going, I am going to try and keep myself focused today because there is a lot to cover. But if you guys if you do have any questions about anything that I talk about today, please make sure that you put it in the chat and I will try and make sure I answer it. I'll kind of try and make sure I look over there after I kind of cover each piece of this. And I'm going to start by saying that there is no way that I could possibly give you all of the education and the things that you need to know about your hormones in one simple episode today. I mean, I could literally probably do a complete episode on every single hormone. I'm just going to move my cat because he's literally going to drive me crazy because his tail is in the way. Get off the counter. I think he just wants to be famous. I think I should maybe start him an Instagram account. I'm not going to be that person. I can't have a Instagram account for my animals, just not me. Anyways, back to what I was saying is that there's just no way that I can do in one episode and you would be so overwhelmed because hormones are so complex. And what I really want you guys to get out of this today is a basic understanding of the connections between your hormones and also what we want to be looking to optimize in order to ensure that things are working properly, how to assess things and how to optimize things. That's really what you guys need to know. You need to know what's being impacted, signs that things are being impacted, and how to actually optimize things. All right. So hopefully this will give you guys some direction. And if you're watching live, like I said, go ahead and you can post some questions out there. I am not actually looking at the live stream on Instagram. So if you do post a question up there, I will probably go back to it at the end. So make sure that you put a reference to it because I do want to keep myself focused today. All right, so let's get started because I'm looking at my notes. What are hormones? Hormones are essentially simply chemical messengers that they carry signals throughout your bloodstream to all of your organs, to your muscles, to your bones and other tissues to basically tell your body what to do and when to do it. The easiest analogy to give you, and I'm not even a band instructor, is to imagine you have like an orchestra and all of the instruments need to play in tune. They all need to kind of sound, in tune, right? That's essentially what your hormones are. They all kind of have a role. And when they all come together, everything is great. But it's also where like, if a couple of things are off, everything else just doesn't sound as good. We all know when you hear that one person in the chorus that like, oop, they're just a little out of tune, or that one instrument that's just a little out of tune, it can throw everything off and be a distraction, right? It's the same thing here with your hormones. Now, I'm not going to cover all of the hormones. I'm going to cover the basic ones that I feel like you guys are probably going to be most familiar with, and maybe some that you guys haven't considered. And I've kind of broken them down into categories. And the first ones that I'm going to talk about are your metabolic hormones, the ones that you guys are likely most I guess I would say most educated on or have the most thoughts about are going to be your sex hormones and your stress hormone and your thyroid hormones. But also there are some other hormones that I want to talk about along with your growth and repair hormones. And what you're going to find is as I'm talking about this stuff, you're going to see a lot of direct relation to when this is off, this is what happens. And I will help you guys figure out what you should be focusing on if you suspect that you might have any kind of hormonal stuff going on or anything like that. Okay, so let's get started with the metabolic hormones. And as you guys know, it is coffee time with Coach Cheryl. So you will always have my big mug of coffee. And I am thinking of maybe upgrading. I've had this little mug here for quite a while and I feel like I need to find another one. But if y'all see me sipping on my coffee or you hear me take a second, it's because I'm enjoying my coffee with you guys this morning. All right, so let's talk about the metabolic hormones. Number one is we have insulin. Insulin is what helps to regulate your blood sugar. It actually does also help with our body. So it's also called like the storage hormone. It helps your body take the calories you're taking in and utilize it for energy or to store it later on. And if that energy is not used later on, it ends up becoming body fat. It does also help with muscle growth. So a lot of people just associate insulin with like It's this bad thing, and we have to keep ourselves like from producing too much insulin. Insulin is helpful for helping to grow your muscles. If you don't have energy going to your muscles, you're not going to be able to lift with your, you're not going to be able to use your muscles, or they're not going to be working as properly. I'm going to talk later about how this gets linked with other hormones. Glucagon is another hormone, and this one is going to help with fat mobilization and energy production. So it works with insulin to help ensure that our fat is being mobilized and utilized for energy. Okay, so really important for us to understand that. Leptin and ghrelin are responsible for regulating your appetite. So leptin is, so when a person's leptin is low, it is going to signal them to want to eat more food. It's kind of your body's way of saying, hey, there's not enough energy available. I need to eat more food. And this is typically where people will get some, like, you could even get what's called leptin resistance, and you don't even get that signal anymore. And then ghrelin is going to hopefully impact, it also impacts your hunger and food intake. So these hormones are responsible for regulating your appetite. Your sex hormones are probably, I'm going to talk about the three that are probably what you guys are most comfortable or most knowledgeable on, is testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. Testosterone is important for muscle growth, fat loss, and performance, as well as other things, bone density and things like that. Estrogen, also responsible for fat storage and also important for metabolism. And then progesterone, the biggest one with this is it really has a huge impact on mood and sleep, also with fat storage. So a lot of women going through perimenopause and menopause will be prescribed progesterone as changes in their hormone levels change, and they will see an increase or improvement in their sleep. Stress hormone, what a lot of people know a lot about or think they know a lot about, is cortisol. Cortisol is basically your body's hormone that helps to regulate inflammation and stress. So when cortisol is high, inflammation markers are high, and other things can kind of go wonky. And I'm going to talk a lot about how cortisol and insulin are kind of like the two hormones that probably are at the root, I would say the root cause of all of the other hormone dysregulations you guys might have that aren't already being impacted by something that is natural, such as menopause or aging, right? So there is going to be some decrease in sex hormones and such as we age, but cortisol and insulin are the two that I think are probably primarily the most important hormones to focus on if you're going to focus on anything here. And it's going to cause it's going to give you the biggest return for your focus points. Okay. So cortisol gets elevated basically whenever we are under too much stress. And I'm going to talk about how all of this stuff kind of, connects with sex hormones and all that kind of stuff. I'm just kind of giving you guys the basics here to start. Thyroid hormones, T3, T4, TSH, these impact your metabolic rate and energy expenditure. So people that have a underactive thyroid might feel like, oh, I don't burn, my metabolism's messed up because I'm hypothyroid. There is some truth to that, but once you are medicated and your thyroid levels are brought to normal, that is no longer the case. You're getting an artificial elevation in your thyroid hormones, but these hormones being off can cause your metabolic rate to decrease. And underactive thyroid isn't just a genetic thing. It can be caused from undereating, too much stress and stuff like that. And I'm going to talk about how we can optimize that as well. Growth and repair hormones. And these two, you guys maybe have seen supplements that, claim to help improve that. Maybe you're like, what is that? What is it going to do for me? Growth hormone is important for recovery, muscle repair, and fat loss. You'll see this this is actually you can actually get injections and stuff like that. And this is considered a performance enhancing drug. And IGF-1, which does help with anabolic processes such as building muscle. And then a couple of other ones that I want to touch on today are melatonin. Okay, so melatonin, I think people are like, oh, I shouldn't be taking melatonin because my body's not going to produce melatonin, or I'm going to become reliant on it. Melatonin is really important, and it's important for sleep recovery, hormone regulation, and a number of other things. But there are some things that not having enough melatonin or not getting the right amount of melatonin can impact other things as well. Adiponectin is another hormone that helps to enhance insulin sensitivity, which we're going to talk more about insulin and cortisol, and fat metabolism. And if we have too much inflammation in our body, this is going to impact our adiponectin. And then incretins, which is going to be like your GLP-1s, and they help with insulin and appetite control. So that's a lot of hormones, right? And I purposely did not like really deep dive into any of them. I wanted to kind of give you guys a basic overview of all of the hormones and kind of like categorize them. And now I want to kind of explain to you how they all work together and how some can be impacted from the others. And I'm going to start with kind of going back down and talking about how insulin and cortisol kind of impact everything. Insulin and cortisol really work together for helping to regulate energy, to help. And when we have an increase in cortisol, our body is going to increase our insulin production because it's going to help fight off whatever inflammation or stress our body is under. But the problem really happens is when there's too much stress in the body, or there's too much calories going in. That's also a stressor. There's too much body fat. There's too much stress. And that chronic elevation of insulin or that chronic elevation of cortisol can lead to other problems. And here's where a lot of people go wrong when we're talking about, we'll talk about insulin in particular. They assume, oh my gosh, I need to get more insulin sensitive. You hear that word insulin sensitive, and they think that they should be cutting out carbohydrates. And that's really not the case. What you're really looking to do to get yourself more insulin sensitive is giving your body signals that it needs to burn body fat, right? And that's where it has to come down to more of just a, well, let's just remove carbs, right? We have to look at overall calories. We have to look at stress factors, because if stress factors are high, your body's it's not going to lower your insulin levels. It's going to keep rising your insulin levels. So it's really important to understand that just looking to one thing, like let's cut out carbs, isn't really going to help the problem. Monitoring calorie intake, ensuring that you're getting enough movement, we're going to talk about all that kinds of stuff, is really important. The other things, as we're talking about insulin and cortisol, is that high cortisol levels, they also suppress testosterone and estrogen production. So for those of you guys that are dealing with problems with sex hormones and you're not looking at things like insulin and cortisol, these have a direct relation to it. And cortisol primarily, as you can see, does have that. You're going to have lower muscle mass, decreased libido, increased fat storage, and you're primarily going to see this around the abdomen. And this is where people are like cortisol belly, or my cortisol's high, that's why I'm gaining weight in my midsection. I'm going to talk about how we can work around this kinds of stuff shortly. Okay. Other things to talk about with insulin before I kind of move on to the thyroid is how it impacts those appetite hormones, leptin and ghrelin. Okay. So whenever we become insulin resistant, it does impair leptin signaling, and this can help. This actually does lead to more hunger and cravings. And it's why it's so important that when you guys are suspecting that you have any kind of hormone imbalances, that you have to realize that intuitive eating is kind of garbage at this point, because your body is out of tune, right? Your orchestra is not performing the right way, and you have to get out of tune. You have to get back in tune, which does require some intentional eating, not intuitive eating, or in some intentional nutrition changes, not just going intuitively. All right. So it sometimes is hard to do this. This is where kind of getting a coach or getting a professional to take a look at things and help you to kind of figure out what you need to change can be helpful. All right. So let's go into the thyroid hormones and then the growth hormones as well. So what's really important to kind of look at the correlation here is thyroid and growth hormones. So as I mentioned, your growth hormone, I'm going to recap that. It's important for recovery, muscle repair, and fat loss. So for those of you guys in the gym and you're like, I just feel like I don't recover as good. I don't, feel like my muscle growth is happening. Like I'm putting in the work and I'm not getting anywhere. Okay. A sluggish thyroid can lead to limited growth hormone production. But a growth hormone production typically can be obviously downregulated if we're not getting enough sleep, because it happens as we're sleeping. So it's where, as I mentioned, all of these things are connected. All right. So like if we're not getting enough sleep, we're not going to be producing enough growth hormone. If our thyroid is sluggish, we're not going to get enough growth hormone. So there's so many reasons why it's important not to go down the rabbit hole of like one specific hormone and looking at them all as a big picture here. And that's what I'm trying to keep this as. Okay. Going back into melatonin, a lot of people with elevated cortisol levels notice that they don't have as good sleep patterns, or that you don't even know you have a cortisol problem. So we'll see changes in sleep based on that. And that's because your sleep wake cycle is now impacted by those cortisol levels. Whenever we are thinking about optimizing sleep or optimizing our hormones, our sleep cycle, our circadian rhythm is also very, very important. And I'm going to talk about how we're going to optimize things shortly. But whenever we're having dysregulated sleep patterns, melatonin and cortisol are also going to be impacted as well. Okay. So a lot of this is, like I mentioned, just kind of getting you guys to understand that there's a lot of shit that could be going wrong with your hormones. And if you're sitting there right now and you're like, yeah, a lot of this stuff makes sense to me, and I can kind of go down some symptoms right now of hormone imbalances. Maybe you've got like I already mentioned, the low libido, maybe low energy, maybe you feel puffy, maybe your joints, maybe even when you don't work out, you just feel like your joints are sore. Maybe your gut is off, like you just don't go to the bathroom regularly. Maybe, you just feel like so you're gaining weight despite dieting. So you're sitting there and you're like tracking every morsel, you're watching your food, nothing's changing. You're working out and the doctor tells you that your A1C is still high. All of this stuff is going on, right? And it is all directly linked to your hormones. But your hormones, despite what you think, for the most part, are within your control. As I mentioned, there are some things we can't control. As we age, there is going to be a decrease in hormone production, right? And that's where some people need a little bit of a boost. But the little bit of a boost needs to come from understanding what might have caused the hormone imbalances. Because as we age, our hormones should decrease in balance. In balance. N is in Nassau, okay? Not imbalance as in Mary. Okay, so that's the goal of being healthy, is that as you are aging, your hormones are dropping at the same level. That is a healthy metabolism. But what happens is, because we have so many external factors that could impact our hormones, things don't always go that way. Underlying non-addressed conditions with even things like PCOS in women, other things that are not being factored in, lifestyle, alcohol intake, all of that stuff is going to impact your hormones. Your exercise is going to impact your hormones. The amount of muscle mass you have is going to impact your hormones. There's a ton of things. Your body fat percentages is going to impact your hormones. And that's where I'm going to start to talk about optimization here. So far, I'm just going to kind of take a look over here. I don't see any questions. I just wanted to scroll over to Instagram just to make sure I didn't miss anybody that might have had questions on there, and I don't see any, so that's good. But if you guys do, feel free to pop them in the chart. Okay, or in the chat. So let's talk about optimization here. Whether you are right now experiencing what looks like or feels like all of a sudden your hormones are dysregulated and you are putting on body fat, you don't know why. Like all of a sudden things just don't feel right. Okay, maybe that's you. Maybe you are trying to prevent. You don't want any of this stuff to happen to you. So I totally understand this. I'm 39 years old. I'm going into my 40s. I want to make sure that my 40s and my 50s are thriving. I don't want to have hormone dysregulations. So it's really important to address things now. Okay, so whatever your goals are, I want to talk about what actually matters most. First things first, if you suspect you have a hormone imbalance, you need to be an advocate for yourself. That means when you go to the doctor, you need to ask him for a thorough lab panel. Now, you can't bring, can you measure my adiponectin, my melatonin? No. But you need to understand what it looks like to run a good, thorough lab panel. You want to have your sex hormones checked, your thyroid levels checked, not just like your TSH and your T4. Get a full panel. Check your leptin, check other nutrients as well, like your vitamin D, your vitamin B, because I'm going to talk about optimization in a second. Whenever I have a client that's suspecting any kind of hormone imbalances, or they're going to their doctor to get labs done, I always try and make sure they're like, hey, get the full panel run, get all these tests run. And sometimes their doctors look at them like they have two heads. Like, why are you asking me for all of this? Because your doctor, his main goal is to make sure that you're not sick. That's it. I hate to say it that way, but your doctor is not looking to optimize. He is looking to make sure that you do not need medication. Do you need medication? Nope, then you're okay. Okay. What I like to do is look at optimization. You're better off optimizing everything, because if you're missing something that's off, 2 years later, it might now become a problem. Okay. So why wait until it becomes a problem? Okay. Look ahead, get under the hood before it's time to get under the hood. So do your maintenance. And that means checking for things that you can't see on a daily basis. Okay. So you're assessing your labs, and you're also listening to your biofeedback. All of these things I've talked about: energy, mood, focus, digestion, changes in your weight. If you've changed nothing in your food and your training and all of a sudden you're gaining weight, things like that do signal that something might not be right. And even if all of your labs come back normal, it doesn't mean that something doesn't still need to be optimized, because even things that are within normal range doesn't mean that you can't be symptomatic. Okay, so you might not be as symptomatic as somebody else, or you might experience symptoms in the norm range that somebody else wouldn't. Let's talk about optimization. The hardest one and the most important one is stress management. Guys, I cannot tell you how much stress impacts your blood sugar, your cortisol levels, everything, your sex hormones, your body's ability to absorb nutrients. Everything is impacted by stress. And I think when people hear this, you think, well, I can't just like quit my job and, toss my kids out the front door and get rid of all of the responsibilities that I have and start practicing yoga and mindfulness and box breathing and all of this stuff. I totally get it. Okay. Like, I understand that. In fact, just this morning, I was under a lot of stress. Like, felt myself in my workout this morning being like, I just have so much on my mind right now. And it was really hard to like stay present. But one of the things that helps with stress management is exercise, if it doesn't become an added stressor. Okay. So so looking at ways to not be so reactive to stress, which is what I did this morning. It was really hard for me to stay focused on rowing. But I was like, all of that stuff is going to be there when I'm done. Okay. So like, do this. And then looking at stress management techniques. So for me, what I do, honestly, is I tend to get stressed when I get overwhelmed. And whenever I feel like this morning, I had like 5 million things that I had to do and it felt like everything was going wrong. So I was like, okay, like when I get done, I'm just going to like write the things down right now that I'm overwhelmed with, like just write them down so I can start to like chip away at what I can control. That's all I was going to do. And I'm going to focus on one thing at a time, because usually stress comes down to feeling like pressure, worry, fighting with, people or whatever. Like all of that stuff is like, what can you actually control? Okay. So I'm not the kind of girl that's going to tell you that you need to start, having a 2-hour morning routine and a 2-hour bedtime routine. But I think that it's important to set boundaries, and it's important to understand how to not be so reactive to stress, and knowing what things you need to be doing that help decrease your stress. Try not turning to food, because that's going to become another problem. Food and alcohol is not the solution. All right. That was a joke. All right. Sleep is also another one. And this is, again, one of those ones easier said than done when have an infant child that you have to breastfeed every 2 hours, and you have, you don't get done from work until 6. You got to take your kids to sports and all that stuff. But I'm going to be honest, guys, when we're looking at all of this dysregulation, this is the next thing. Like, you have to make sure that you're prioritizing sleep. Sleep is a priority. It is a necessity for you to be healthy. So I think that the best advice I can give anybody looking to optimize their sleep is not to think about having to get 8 hours of sleep a night. It's not like I'm supposed to get 8 hours of sleep a night. It's okay, where am I at right now on average? You get 5-6 hours of sleep a night. How can I optimize that sleep? Are you sleeping through the night? That's where we're going to talk about nutrition and other things that you can do to help optimize the amount of sleep you're getting. When you're looking to increase the duration of your sleep, it's not, I got to get 8 hours of sleep a night. It's okay, I'm getting into bed at 11, I'm falling asleep by 11:30, and I'm up again by 5. How can I get into bed a half an hour early? Okay. So like, how can I get in bed by 10:30? So it's like slowly chipping away at making habit changes to get yourself in bed earlier. And it does come down to looking at your time throughout the day. Where are you wasting time? Where can you fill time? What do you not need to be doing throughout your day? Where can you be more productive? For a lot of you guys, if you're like me and you're super busy, I am the kind of person that, like, right now I'm thinking about, okay, I have a really busy afternoon. I got to make sure that I have stuff done before 2, because after 2, I have like too much stuff to be doing. And I don't want to be doing things that I don't want to be doing when I want to be relaxing and going to bed. So I try and really fill my gaps in space earlier in the day, so that at nighttime I have that time to decompress and relax. Okay, but it's really important because your circadian rhythm does regulate everything. And we're going to talk about eating, but eating along with your circadian rhythm helps regulate everything. Exercise, and the right dose and type of exercise is probably one of the most impactful thing on your hormones. So making sure that you are getting in strength training. I love that Dr. Gabrielle Lyon talks about muscle being the organ of longevity. Guys, if you have muscle, you are going to be a healthier individual. So you cannot go wrong by prioritizing strength training, getting enough aerobic exercise. And despite what a lot of people are going to tell you, high intensity interval training is really good for optimizing hormones as long as the stress response is monitored and obviously we are recovering from it. Okay. So this is where if you are a CrossFitter and you do not understand the importance of nutrition and recovery from your workouts, you might be missing the mark. This is where a lot of people end up getting injured. They end up burning out. They end up gaining weight or feeling puffy when they're not doing the right things with their nutrition to match their exercise, which is the final thing that I'm going to talk about. And that is nutrition. Well, let me go back a step. Let me finish talking about exercise. I kind of jumped the gun on nutrition. Exercise dosage and volume, I think also I should probably talk a little bit about. You want to make sure that if you've been training for like over a year, that you're also making changes to your training to continue to progressively overload or change the stimulus. Or if you feel like you're at your genetic potential, like you can't really get any fitter anywhere, then maybe you are looking to just maintain. But I do believe that that's kind of a fallacy. I think that everybody can find places to push themselves harder. I do think that there should be, like I mentioned this, a mixture of intensity, aerobic exercise, and strength training. So I think that the people that are just doing weights are missing the benefits from an insulin sensitivity perspective, from a hormone perspective of aerobic activity, and even some of the high intensity training. Guys, I love CrossFit because it mixes all of those things. CrossFit is not what people think it is. It's not just doing burpees and thrusters for time. Like that's what people see, but CrossFit is a program, and the program should have a combination of different energy pathways and different stimuluses and different modalities, right? Those things are so important for it. There is a neuroendocrine response with CrossFit. You know, there's a central nervous system response with CrossFit. This is the stuff that people don't understand. You don't have to do CrossFit. You don't even have to call it CrossFit, but you should be getting some strength work in, okay, some high intensity training in, some type of skill work that's going to challenge your central nervous system, and aerobic based exercise. Okay, so that doesn't have to be CrossFit, but that's freaking CrossFit. Now we're going to talk about nutrition, because if all of these things, if there's one thing that you can do that doesn't require necessarily more time, it's prioritizing your nutrition. So stress management, oftentimes we can't take things off of our plate. Sleep, it's really hard to get more time to sleep. Exercise, you're probably already doing what you can consistently commit to, right? But nutrition is usually where people are missing the mark. And it's what is going to actually maybe even enhance all of the other things. If your nutrition's dialed in, sometimes you can manage stress a little bit better, because when you're actually getting enough calories, you can think clearly. So you're not so stressed and anxious about things all the time. When you're being fed enough, you're getting enough sleep, and you're getting enough calories, your body's actually regulating at night. So you can sleep better, you sleep deeper. Your exercise goes better because you have more energy, right? So it's optimizing nutrition. And nutrition is, it's kind of, there's so much I could talk about with nutrition, but I'm going to give you the basics here, because guess what? The basics are what works. And I don't believe in complicated shit. Like, I am the kind of coach and the kind of nutritionist that is going to teach you guys what matters most. All right. So when it comes to nutrition for regulating your hormones, all right, you can go down these rabbit holes of like, oh, it's the sugar. Oh, it's these supplements. Oh, I got to go on this carnivore diet. I've got to do this extreme intermittent fasting. Guys, all of that shit does not fucking matter. Okay. It doesn't matter, right? It's like a distraction. Okay. You guys want traction. I love talking about distraction versus traction. This is what you need to understand. If you would like to optimize your hormones, get back to basics, okay? And you might be like, but I do that already. We're going to talk about that, all right? So first and foremost, what are you feeding your body? All right? Are you feeding your body enough nutrients? That means you're getting in lean proteins, plenty of animal-based proteins. If you're a vegan, you're getting good sources of proteins from things like soy, tempeh, tofu, nuts and seeds, vegetables. But I know primarily you guys mostly are not going to be vegan or vegetarian, but I did want to make sure I put that out there. But you're getting good quality proteins at every single meal. All right. So if you're eating 3 to 5 times a day, you are always getting protein. You're getting good sources of complex carbohydrates and fruits and vegetables. So getting in plenty of different types of vegetables. Guys, you should have vegetables at least 2 of your meals a day. Okay. Like if you're not doing that, like there's one more step. You could go down the rabbit hole of like which vegetables produce which nutrients, because nutrient deficiencies often also lead to a lot of these hormone imbalances. But what I will tell you is this: most vegetables have similar micronutrient profiles. And I've done research on this because I was going to actually recently put out a list of here's a good source of these nutrients. And what I found was a lot of the vegetables overlap, right? So the best thing I can tell you is eat by colors. Try and get a little bit of variety in the colors of your fruits and vegetables. You know, eat some greens, eat some reds, eat some whites, eat some yellows, oranges, whatever it is. Okay, eat those different colors and you're probably going to be getting some different nutrients. Okay, so complex carbohydrates, as I mentioned, carbs are not the enemy, sugar is not the enemy. But when I mean complex carbohydrates, what we're looking for is low glycemic carbs that are also going to provide your body with fiber. Okay, fiber is also essential for helping with hormone regulation. Fiber is a big thing that I focus on with my clients. It's not just about numbers and eating clean, right? It's getting enough fiber in. So getting enough fiber. So whole grains, I like to use a lot of like whole grain bread, wraps, pastas. Sweet potato and starchy vegetables are also good sources of fiber. Rice isn't really a good source of fiber, but it's a pretty good carb to add in there if you have some gluten sensitivity or issues with your gut. But all of those things, guys, getting in lots of that fiber. Avocado is also super high in fiber. Healthy fats, and when I say healthy fats, I should say natural fats are also important for hormone balance. The dosage of them is very small. You don't need a whole bunch of fats, but getting a mixture of things from like nuts, seeds, olive oil, coconuts, saturated fats from like grass-fed beef and dairy products can be good for your body. These are all things that are important for you guys to have as the base of your diet. It's going to ensure that you're getting the macros and the micros, because if you're getting those kinds of foods in, it's going to make the macros easier, which is the next step of this. If you are not getting in the right amount of proteins, carbs, and fats for your body, you are going to have problems. Now, this is not a number science experiment. It's not, I need to have 185 grams of carbs every single day. It's knowing what your body needs on an average, right? So like your body is not going to all of a sudden have a hormone imbalance if one day you were under 30 grams of carbs or the next day you were over 50 grams of carbs. But over time, if you're constantly having imbalances, that is going to cause problems. Okay, so you want to have the food quality dialed in, but you also need to know what your ranges are. What's enough protein for you on a regular basis to give you enough, right? What's the right amount of carbohydrates for you to be insulin sensitive and see good performance gains, right? What do we need to get in terms of fats to ensure that you're getting enough for hormone regulation here, right? So these are all important things, and it's where you do need both. You need to have food quality, you need to have macronutrients. What I will also tell you is this, okay? As I'm talking about, food quality and macros, a lot of people focus so much on the foods that they need to avoid in order to fix hormones. And food avoidance isn't necessarily going to help you fix your hormones. What I will say is if you are filling your calories with nothing but nutrient void calories, and I don't want to call them empty calories, but if it's just providing macros and it's not giving you a bunch of micros, you are going to be nutrient deficient. Okay, so I can totally lose weight by cutting my calories and eating pizza and crackers, but I'm not going to be getting nutrients. Okay, and some foods do have an inflammatory response. Alcohol being the biggest one. Okay, so if you are drinking alcohol and you're concerned about hormone regulation problems and you're trying to figure out if you should cut out, sugar, no, cut out the freaking alcohol, because that is a huge hormone disruptor. But the reason I mention that is because a lot of people focus on removing foods, not looking at what they should be adding in to optimize. And I'm talking about optimizing here. With doing this, what will happen is you will likely start to burn more calories, because when your body is optimized, as I mentioned, insulin, cortisol, all of these things help your body metabolize energy. So you're going to be burning through more calories if you're feeding yourself enough. And this is the biggest misconception, is that, well, I've been tracking my food and I'm doing this and I'm not losing weight and I'm getting fatter. Well, something is not right. And sometimes less is not more. Sometimes less means things go wonky. Okay. So nutrition from a calorie, macro, micro perspective is very important. And then the last one to touch on here is a little bit about nutrient timing. This isn't going to be the catch-all, and that's why I don't want you guys focusing on this, but there is some science to nutrient timing, primarily around or after your high intensity training and things like that can help improve, obviously, your body's, ability to go through insulin, or burn through calories, all of that kind of stuff, helping you become more insulin sensitive, but also for sleep. So like getting the right amount of calories and the right types of foods before bed can enhance your sleep, or getting the wrong types of foods before bed can maybe disrupt your sleep. So there are some truths to nutrient timing being important, along with, like I mentioned, if you guys are suspecting you guys have hormone imbalances, you might also have issues with like not being hungry at certain times of the day, but then all of a sudden you're starving. Okay. Those are signs that things are not off, and you just being like, but I'm not hungry, or I am hungry, is what you need to kind of fix. And that's where meal timing, kind of getting into some kind of a structure, and you're just eating on a regular, consistent basis, is going to be the best for you. And then what you can do then is you can start to optimize based on when your hunger cues are highest. And over time, that does get regulated. Okay. So a lot of stuff to cover today. I wanted to just kind of open up the floor. Anybody that's watching, if you guys have any questions before I sign off today, because this was a little bit of, there was a lot to talk about today. And I know I kind of brushed on everything. And I think what I might end up doing is an actual workshop where you guys can all come on, anybody interested in like hormone optimization, and we can really dive into some things in like a Zoom call. If anybody wants that, we'll kind of get that on the books for maybe, it's going to be February in a couple of days. Everybody's talking about how long the month of January is. I don't even feel like it was that long, but I guess it feels long. I don't know. But anybody have anything that they want me to touch on, talk about before I sign off? And if you're listening to the replay and you have questions, there is a link in my show notes for you guys to reach out to me. But all right. I don't see any questions in the chat on Instagram. Lee, thank you so much for listening, all that. First fix, more sleep, 100%. 100%. Felice, probably off topic, but what's a good pre-workout snack for a 4:35? Actually, that's not an off-topic question. I love that question. So if I were you, it's funny, I just had a client talking to me about this yesterday. I work out early as well, and I would recommend something between 100 and 200 calories based on the length of your session and what kind of training you're doing, and keeping it something easy digested. I personally, and when I talked to her about this, I like the way something a little bit carby sits in my stomach. So it might be I've been using these little Alyssa's oatmeal bites, or like little oatmeal cookies, or like a half of a granola bar, or like the Clif bar, or anything like that. Some people just prefer like maybe a piece of fruit, like a banana. You could do like a whole grain waffle topped with a little bit of peanut butter. It really depends on what I don't want you doing is having to get up early for the shenanigans of like preparing a meal. It should be something that you can grab and just like head to the gym. So my routine is 2 of those little Alyssa's cookies and my coffee. Yes, this is my second cup of coffee. And then I hit my workout. And that usually gives me enough fuel for about 60 to 90 minutes. If you don't want to eat before your workout, what I would then recommend is maybe putting some kind of a carb drink in your workout drink. So if you do like an amino acid or a pre-workout, adding some kind of carbs to that, which will, if you tend to kind of get tired halfway through your class or through your workout, it would give you that boost of energy in that second half. But that was a good question. I love these questions. You guys have any other questions? Doesn't have to be related to hormones. Look at that. Done with my coffee just in time. By the way, this is half decaf. I use I have an espresso, and my coffee recipe, just so y'all know, is, you're welcome, Felice. And hopefully I'm saying your name right, is I do, I have an espresso. So I'll do a shot of the decaf and a shot of the regular espresso. and make my own Americano. I used to be a Starbucks girly every single morning, and now I do it at home. And I add some sugar-free skinny syrup, some almond milk, milk frother, a little bit of whipped cream, and it's my favorite thing in the day. Any other questions related to training, nutrition? Go ahead and put them out there. I got some people watching. If you have something to ask me now, related to anything. I'm going to look at the other stream too. All right. Well, hopefully, if you guys did get to watch this, it was helpful. I guess the last thing to end on is kind of putting it all together. And how does all of this factor into you losing body fat, building muscle, or what might be going on with your body that you can't control? Okay. If your hormones are off, it's going to make everything a lot harder. All right. So there is truth. I think that a lot of people are like, it's just calories in, calories out. That is 100% true. That equation is true. But it doesn't mean that influences from hormones doesn't make that equation a little bit harder to control. Okay. So like that's really, really, really hard to, you have to realize that those factors, and it's where also, if you're looking to really take yourself seriously and see physical changes, you want to lose fat and you want to keep it off, you do want to optimize calorie intake and macronutrient intake. If you guys want like a food audit, you could always reach out to me. I do food audits. I do metabolic assessments to kind of help you guys understand that stuff. Lee, you need to work on portion sizes. Don't we all? I was talking to one of my clients, and I was telling her how I felt guilty because on Saturday I made homemade pizza, and I was like so looking forward to it. I'm like, I am not going to eat half of this pizza. I'm going to eat the whole thing. I have a huge appetite. And I did not feel full eating the whole pizza. So I was like, so yes, portion size is a hard thing. I think the second thing about portion sizes is being realistic about portion sizes. I think that I'm going to actually make an Instagram post about this today. Put it on, make a little note of that. Let's be realistic on portion sizes. What we relate portion sizes to is like the package says. So let's talk about dessert. you open the cake and it's like, it says a 12th of the cake is a serving size and it's like 400 calories. And you look at the size of the piece and you look at this and the amount of calories in it, and you're like, oh my God, is that even worth it? Whenever I'm thinking of portion sizes, I think about what size piece of that would make me feel like I had enough to feel satiated. And that's the hard part about it. So, and that's where calories can come into play. So Lee, if you ever need anything, just reach out to me. So, man, I'm getting the sniffles. I hope I'm not getting sick. All right. I'm going to head off, guys. I got a lot of things going on today. I started my Jumpstart on Sunday. I'm giving them all an upgrade, which they all don't know about yet, but they're all getting an upgrade today, and I'm excited for that. If you guys have any other questions, topics you want me to talk about, I've been doing these live on Instagram now, which I love. Please feel free to shoot me a message. You can DM me anything that you want more in-depth talking on, because I love doing my podcast and I would love to connect and just obviously provide more value wherever I can. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys. I know it was a lot. So if you want to listen to it again, I would recommend that. If you have more questions about specific hormones, like I said, I kind of touched on everything. Feel free to reach out to me. Or if you have questions about what lab tests to ask your doctor for, feel free to reach out to me. And I will talk to you guys all soon. Bye.